So, is anyone brand new to the philosophy of Krishna consciousness?
Yeah.
Raise their hand.
His grace, Vrindavan, Krishna. Kirtan is the other guy.
Krishna consciousness is very easy. We are not this material body that, under the laws of nature, experiences repeated birth, death, disease, and old age. We're eternal spirit soul. We have an identity in the spiritual energy, which is by far superior to our knowledge and awareness of what we consider ourselves to be in this temporary material world. So the goal of life, especially in the human form of life, is to realize that most sublime and favorable position. So the process of Krishna consciousness is meant to expedite that for one and all as smoothly and as easily, as rapidly and as effectively as possible. So in this Kali Yuga is a season within the cosmic, let's say, time sequence, just like now we're hoping that it's springtime for the last, what is today, the 27th, 6 days, but tomorrow's going to be 36 degrees as a high and 24 as a low, so things are kind of confused. But seasonal changes are there, and spring, yes, very nice, Hare Krishna. People take things to be more favorable in the spring and in the summer for overall productivity and happiness on many different levels. So this Kali Yuga is described as the winter season of the living entity, where real truth, real, let's say, goodness and real better qualities of the pure spirit soul are more and more covered with the progress of this age. So it's a very difficult age that we're living in if you actually sincerely want self-realization. What to speak if you don't want, and it's very difficult to even have a clue that there's something more than just gross materialism. So in this age of Kali, things have been simplified, which could have been done longer, more elaborately in previous ages. For one, people had a lifespan that was much longer than our paltry 60, 70, 80 years, which should be 100 years. People lived fabulous lifetimes. They were stronger, taller, they were more intelligent, they had sharper memory. All things were better and increased. So things are diminishing more and more. So spiritual life has been made very, very simple. That by chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, which is the full manifestation of the absolute truth as a person, Sadaishvarya Purna, the complete manifestation of God, all potencies, all energies, and even more, all mercies are there by associating oneself with the Maha Mantra, the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. And of all types of ways of associating with the Maha Mantra, the best way is when as many devotees or willing people as possible come together in Mass and chant the holy name for as many hours a day as possible. Best if it could be continuous, non-stop. So the holy place of Vrindavan, which is some 100 miles south of New Delhi, north central India, it's where Krishna appeared, very rare appearance on this planet some 5,000 years ago. So that place is known as a holy place, a sacred place, or what we say, a Leelastan. And any sincere spiritual attempts in proper regulation and following proper disciplic instruction will yield results thousands of times in more beneficial multiplication. So especially our line of spiritual teachers coming down from Krishna, and Krishna's recent reappearance some 500 years ago of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu they stressed and desired that there be 24-hour-a-day nonstop Hare Krishna chanting with expert musicianship, playing musical instruments very expertly, and singing the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra in many different ragas. Raga means melody. Prabhupada, one time, Prabhupada was an expert harmonium player himself, and he said, this is the way to please Krishna, by chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra in many, many different melodies. And raga, or melody, we're attracted to the melody, we like what we hear, but there's a higher principle that these authorized ragas, which are coming down from Krishna's abode in the spiritual world, like if you go to a restaurant, they say, this is imported from Italy, and you go, wow, or wherever it's coming from. It's not from New York City, or it's not from my local neighborhood where everything is blasé, and I've been there and seen it and done it. It's coming from a place that I've never experienced before. So, Golokera Premadan Harinam Sankirtan, the treasure of divine love, of the highest form of love and reciprocation, the highest form of happiness, of which we have no clue of, no amount of money or fame or whatever can even get you a glimpse of that happiness. It's what everyone is hankering for, that eternal, spiritual, deathless, ever youthful happiness is available in this chanting of Hare Krishna. So, Srila Prabhupada, who is known to be the foremost exponent and empowered representative of Krishna consciousness in the Western world, he took this valuable treasure of Kevala Prema Bhakti, that's exclusive, unalloyed devotion to the Supreme Lord without any contamination of material desire. He brought it out of India, out of the holy places, and caused a spiritual revolution to make Krishna consciousness available to people all over the world in all the different languages, all the different countries. I think that the numbers today are simply astounding. How many temples, how many devotees, how many, so many things. And Prabhupada came here on the order of his teacher with no known contacts, with practically no money, had no experience outside of India. He landed here in New York he arrived in New York seriously to take up residence here in late October 1965. That means winter is upon us. And if you look at the statistics, that was one of the coldest winters since records were being kept, 65 into 66. And somehow, through great struggle over 1 year, some people from the Beat generation turning into hippies at the time, they cooperated with Srila Prabhupada, and they started the first small storefront center, which is still existing. It's in our possession as a rental, 26 2nd Avenue, near the 2nd Avenue F train stop on 2nd Avenue. And he incorporated the International Society for Krishna Consciousness here under New York State religious codes. And from that, it spread all over the United States to Europe and beyond. And many, many sincere persons came forward to be Srila Prabhupada's disciple. And one such person was a young man who later became known to be Ayendra Das. He was from Haymarket, Virginia, which is near Manassas. It's like 60 miles west of Washington, D.C. And he had a musical background, but he was like a fire covered by smoke. You couldn't see the very deep, something from the past life or something from a spiritual place far beyond this world that was seemingly not perceivable under that he was a young man and a hippie and a product of American culture in the 1960s and 70s. But he immediately manifested this intense desire to chant Hare Krishna and to spread the chanting of Hare Krishna in all different ways and means possible. He was also an expert craftsman. He could sculpt, he could paint, he could do welding work, make resin molds. He could play stringed instruments, wind instruments. He was an expert singer, and he was an expert writer. He was very amazing in expressive writing, and he was very, very determined. So myself, and this is Vrindavan Prabhu. He's now living in Riverside, California, and he's come here this weekend to participate in this combined festival of celebrating 10 years, March 25th, 2012, till now, 2022, 10 years of trying humbly to follow in this great personality's footsteps, who gave us his friendship and his mentorship and his heart and his instruction to do this, something similar here in New York City. Not 24 hours a day, although we aspire for that, but we've been doing between 4 or 6 hours a day over the last, mostly 6 hours. And when there's an extraordinary thing like a big festival and we have a lot of people, we could try to do like 8, 10, or 12 hours a day. So this is definitely a time of great rejoicing and happiness. Srila Prabhupada, when he completed the Chaitanya Charitamrita, he said, if my spiritual master was present now, it would be a time of great rejoicing. And I know that he is happy by this work of translation. So by the laws of material nature, we all ultimately have to be separated by time and by when each of us have to meet our demise, our death, and what to speak of, you know, our destiny or our need, where we're going to live, what part of the world. Prabhupada, he had gone back to India to recover his health in the middle of 1967, and the devotees who had just met Prabhupada and had practically fallen head over heels in love with him, so attached to him. The experience of meeting a spotlessly pure, compassionate devotee, and you can see in the memoir of many of Srila Prabhupada's disciples, they remarked, I never understood what is to be truly loved by another person in my entire life until I met Srila Prabhupada. I could understand just by his glance, just by his mere audience, that this person loved me. And real love is to give people freedom from repeated birth, death, disease, and old age. That is real love. And so Prabhupada went back and he was consoling them that time and space make no difference. I am chanting Hare Krishna here, you are chanting Hare Krishna there, we're all packed up together. And in terms of, Srila Prabhupada came here when he was 70 years old, and at that time the watchword amongst young people was never trust anyone under the age of 30. Who here is over 30 years old? Raise their hand. So you're untrustworthy. But here is someone twice the age and more of 30, and what to speak of trusting, completely giving themselves to him. This is real love, that you completely trust the other person. There's no question of betrayal or ulterior motives. Only the highest good comes from their association. And because they're following the instructions of their beloved predecessor, ultimately to the Supreme Beloved, Shri Radha and Krishna, it is, and this is the universal happiness. It's true for me, for you, for every living entity. So this Yuga Dharma is very special. It's described that this form of love of Godhead from the highest realm, the spiritual, where Krishna reveals and participates in the highest form of love, is being made available in this age. So Vrindavan Prabhu, he had known Indra from a very, very early age, and he's taken Hare Krishna. We have a Sunday school downstairs too for kids, you know, actually, if kids become restless in here. And both of us have taken responsibility since Indra left this world in 2010 to keep his 24-hour kirtan program going on. Prabhupada wanted this to begin when the temple there was opened in 1975. It started and stopped, and there were some attempts to do it, but not until Indra, you know, just rolled up his sleeves and completely did what was necessary to do it in 1986 did it start. So now 24 years he was doing, and now plus 12, so that's 36 years almost nonstop. So I'd like to ask my dear friend and special guest in New York, Vrindavan, to add something to this.
Hare Krishna. Okay, so you heard something about His Grace Aindra Prabhu from Ram Rai Prabhu. How many of you here have ever heard of His Grace Aindra Das Prabhu? Raise your hand. Yeah, almost everybody.
If you look on YouTube, and you'll see all of.
If you put Aindra Das on YouTube, you will have an avalanche, a plethora of kirtans, because he's chanting every day so many hours for so many years. And he was also here in this temple or the New York area for 5 or 6 years. See the altar here? He built this with his own hand. These oriental gopis are covering, and this like white molding, but the original structure and the poles, he built that himself. And what's now the Even Hotel used to be a parking lot that we leased. You could put like 15 or 16 cars in there. And when Aindra made his beautifully ornate preaching box van truck, he lived in that parking lot, sleeping in the van.
He is known as a great kirtan leader, but not many know that he could build things, as Ram Rai just mentioned. He would build his own, wooden tables and many different things. He built that truck, flatbed truck, it was really beautiful, set up like a moving temple on the back of a flatbed truck. So he was a very pure Vaishnava. And, by pure we mean someone who's chanting the holy name of the Lord purely. In Sri Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi Leela, chapter 8, text 16, it is stated, Bahu Janma Kari Adi Shravana Kirtana Tabutana Pai Krishna Pade Premadana. That if one is infested with the 10 offenses against the holy name of the Lord, then even if one chants the holy name for many, many births, he will still not attain love of Godhead, Krishna Prema, which is the ultimate goal of chanting the holy name ultimately. That is the goal of chanting, actually, is prema, is to re-establish our eternal loving relationship with Krishna. Not for bhukti or mukti.
Explain what that is.
Bhukti is material enjoyment. So you'll see many people, they chant the holy name, but the aim is to get material enjoyment, to get name, fame, profit, adoration, to get money, and so on, like professional kirtaniyas, like that. So their chanting is not with the aim of attaining love of God. But if we also are not careful to avoid the 10 offenses against the holy name, then we will also not attain love of Godhead, reach the platform of prema. Prema is the platform that we reach after chanting what we call Shuddhanam, pure chanting of the holy name. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur has explained all of these details very nicely in his work, Harinam Chintamani. There's a lot of Nam Tattva there, truths about the holy name. And Aindra Prabhu was actually on a very high level of chanting the holy name, which is the reason why so many of us, so many devotees around the world have become so inspired by his chanting. As soon as he would start chanting, the atmosphere would change. It was a totally different platform altogether. Even though in Sri Vrindavan Dham, the Dham, Sri Vrindavan is non-different from a Golok. It's the spiritual world, and especially Krishna Balaram Mandir, Srila Prabhupada's Krishna Balaram Mandir. Hare Krishna, Mataji, maybe the baby can go outside? Is it possible? So the Krishna Balaram Mandir in Vrindavan is very special. Srila Prabhupada said that the entire spiritual world is within these 4 walls. So it's already a very spiritually surcharged atmosphere. But when he would start chanting in the temple room, when he would start singing, the atmosphere would be even more surcharged, because his chanting of the holy name was on that level of Shuddhanam. There are 3 levels of chanting. Nam aparad, chanting with offenses and with the wrong intentions. And then there's the clearing stage, which is called namabhas. And there are different degrees of namabhas, different divisions of namabhas. There's a verse in Srimad Bhagavatam, if you look it up, in the 6th canto, chapter 14, text 2, or actually maybe it's the other way around, chapter 2, text 14. So 6:2:14. That verse explains the lower division of namabhas. Sanketyam, parihasyam, va, stobham, helanam eva va. Vaikuntanama grahanam, aseshagaharam vidu. So there are 4 different types of that lower division of namabhas. And all of us, we most likely perform those types of namabhas on a daily basis. At least when we call out to another person, just as Ajamil called out for his son, Narayan. That's the first type, Sanketya, calling out the holy name but referring to a different person or object. And that is considered to be the least offensive of all of them. And then there are others, such as Parihasya, jokingly, when we're out on Harinam Sankirtan, and somebody comes and they sing along in a joking way. And then Stobha, for musical entertainment or to mock someone. And then Hela is the lowest type, that's with contempt. So these are the types of namabhas that are chanted without faith. Generally, they're chanted without faith. The real true namabhas, which is called Chaya namabhas, and by the way, I'm reiterating a lot of the things that Ayendra Prabhu himself taught. He spoke about these things because he was very philosophical. He understood the philosophy very, very deeply. And whenever any devotee would come and speak to him, either in his room or downstairs on the side of the temple, Krishna Balaram Mandir, he would speak to that devotee for a long time and answer all of their questions. So he was very caring in that way. And like I said, he was very deep. So these are some of the things that he taught, some of these truths from our Gaudiya Vaishnava Acharya's works. And so I'm just reiterating some of these things. So this is the lower division of namabhas, Sanketya, Parihasya, Stobha, Hela. Then there's another higher division of namabhas called Chaya namabhas, or Shraddha namabhas. And that's the type of namabhas which leads to pure chant of the holy name. So that's when a sadhaka, even though he or she may have some contamination within his or her heart, even though he has that contamination, material desires and whatnot, maybe some bad habits, if he or she takes up the holy name, the chanting of the holy name with faith, then gradually that person, the sadhaka, becomes purified and reaches that level of pure chanting, Shuddhanam. And that gives one prema. So it was very clear to all of us that Ayendra Prabhu was chanting Shuddhanam. It was very obvious, you could tell. Right? So he was very pure. Everything about him was very pure. His habits, his speech, what he ate, he would pretty much only take Mahaprasad that he himself cooked and offered to his deities. And his deities was a whole nother subject matter. I was talking about that earlier in our earlier program, that when I first joined him as a 14-year-old boy in 2001, I was a brahmachari back then, and I joined his ashram along with my father. And at that time, he had 400 Shaligram Shilas. 400. For those of you who may not know, Shaligram Shila is a self-manifested form of the Lord in the shape of normally a black-colored stone. But he's actually, we don't see him as a stone. He's actually non-different from the Lord himself. So there were 400, and then one sannyasi, friend of his, Bhakti Siddhanta Swami, disciple of Jayapataka Maharaj, went to Nepal to Gandaki River and gave him, I believe it was 300, so he had 700 for a while. And then Maharaj gave him another 300 or 400 later, and more came from different places, and he ended up with 1,200. And then he still more came, because, you know, Krishna is very attracted to his pure devotees, so he keeps coming, you know. So he ended up with approximately 2,200 Shaligram Shilas that are still there in his room to this day, being worshipped. So he was very dedicated to his deities. He had some, you know, really nice, still has, they're still there, Nitai Sachi Sutta. So he took care of them nicely. They were, you know, about this big. They are this big. And some Govardhan Shilas and some small Gaur-Nitai deities that he had when he was in America. He would take care of them very nicely. So he was engaged in that. He was engaged in, you know, preaching to or mentoring the devotees, you know, speaking to them philosophically, and taking care of the 24-hour kirtan department, which is, you know, as you know, we've both experienced, is not an easy department to take care of. Both of us have served as the department head since Ayendra Prabhu has passed. It's not an easy thing, and ultimately devotees realize later, you know. But he was doing that, as well as, you know, his own personal bhajan. He was very strict with his japa. He wouldn't miss a single round during special times, Kartik, Chaturmasya. He would, you know, increase his number of japa to 64, and then the last 8 months or so of his life, in 2010, he was chanting 2 lakhs of rounds every day, which is 116 rounds daily. So daily he was doing that, and just getting very absorbed in the holy name, and Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's katha, he was hearing Chaitanya Bhagavat all the time. So he was very deeply absorbed in Krishna consciousness, very pure. He was a renunciate, so his standard for dealing with the opposite sex was also very high. So any time that any Mataji wanted to speak to him, I remember he would always have one of us stand next to him while they were talking. The rule of 3, some call it. So him, maybe myself, or Ramarai Prabhu, or some other person, and the Mataji. So it was never just a private conversation between two. That was his strict standard. And yes, as I was talking about eating-wise, he was very pure in his eating habits, only taking Mahaprasad from his deities. On certain occasions, occasionally, once in a while, once in a blue moon, he would accept an invitation to take prasad at someone's house who was dear to him.
And he would bring his principal shalagram and himself offer what they cooked to his...
Right, so yeah, he had a small, very cute Govardhan Shila.
There was a shalagram shila, and it said that, this was special, it had a hoof print of a cow on the bottom, and it says, if you worship such a shila, you're guaranteed to achieve Galoka at the end of your life. Oh, he had that, yes, a little Govardhan.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm thinking of the little Govardhan
Both,
Shila.
he would keep in his-
Both, right. So he had both of those in a small pendant around his neck. And whenever he would go out anywhere, he would put them there, and he would wear them around his neck. That's how dear Krishna was to him. That's how dearly he held his personal deities to his heart. And as Ramrai mentioned, even if he was eating somewhere else, he would take his small Giriraj, the very cute one, and Shaligram to that person's house to honor the offering also. So he was never without, his own deities, Mahaprasad. That was all he took, ever. And he restarted the 24-hour kirtan in Sri Vrindavan Dham. So Srila Prabhupada in 1975, when Krishna Balaram Mandir in Vrindavan opened, he wanted 24-hour kirtan to happen. So it started, but after some time, devotees were not able to keep it going. So a lot of things happened in between 1975 and 1986. But in 1986, long story short, he decided to re-inaugurate the 24-hour kirtan. And there's a nice story behind this. There was something else going on simultaneously with another devotee who was helping, but also the temple accountant, in the morning, after the morning program, he had a little nap, and during that nap...
He was an elder Brijabasi man who was personally friends with Srila Prabhupada, and was on a different platform than the younger disciples, Kapoorji.
Right. Yes, yeah. He actually had a relationship with Srila Prabhupada personally. His name was Kapoorji.
Similar age, slightly younger than Prabhupada.
Yeah, very elderly, very gentlemanly. And he had a dream that morning. He took rest after the morning program, and he had a dream. And that dream, Srila Prabhupada came to him in the dream and was crying to his friend Kapoorji, why is there no 24-hour kirtan in my temple? So Kapoorji, he was touched by this. He was crying.
He was like emotional.
Yeah, he was crying, and he went to Ayendra Prabhu,
Banging on the door.
and he told Ayendra Prabhu about this incident, that Prabhupada came to me in a dream. He was crying, Kapoorji was crying, and he was saying,
And
Prabhupada
Ayendra became emotional and started crying also when he...
So Kapoorji was encouraging Ayendra Prabhu that you like to do kirtan, why don't you take this up, for Srila Prabhupada. So he decided to do it, he did it. Once they had enough men, they started 24-hour kirtan. In 1986, on Ram Vijay Utsav Day, which happens 6 days before Kartik month starts. So since then, this Akhanda Kirtan, it's, in one sense, he would say sometimes that, you could say this is not 24-hour Kirtan, it's Akhanda Nam. Akhanda means unbroken, and Nam is referring to the holy name of the Lord, Nam. So the Hare Krishna Mahamantra is being chanted in the temple room 24 hours a day, non-stop. So that means even while other temple programs and functions are going on, whoever is on those particular shifts, they're there chanting Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare on their beads to keep that chanting going. So, oftentimes we'd have to enforce this also because sometimes devotees wouldn't know the value and they would go here and there or talk or whatever, But this was his mission. And he was very strict about this and also very strict about the mood and mentality by which it's done. In one 24-hour Kirtan department Ishta Goshti we had in 2003, I remember he was very, very, very heavy and emphatic. He was shouting at the top of his lungs. We need to be doing Ahoy Tuki, Apratihata, Akhanda Nam. 3 things. Ahoy Tuki, Apratihata, Akhanda Nam. So in the Nectar of Devotion, there is a verse, it's explaining how devotional service should be done. Ahoituki apratihata atmasu prasidati. So unmotivated and uninterrupted. So that was his motto. The 24-hour kirtan should be unmotivated. It's not being done for some ulterior motive, purely to cultivate devotional service and attain prema bhakti. And uninterrupted, of course, by that he meant when you're in the kirtan, you don't interrupt. You don't get up to, leave to go here and there and, disappear for an hour or half an hour. Like that. That's what he meant. And then akhanda, unbroken Mahamantra. So he was a great soul, and we would like to offer our respects to him on this occasion. It's Sunday, his actual appearance day is on Tuesday, but since we're having the Sunday feast and everyone's here, we did the program in his honor today. Does anybody have any questions?
Quickly.
Aindra. Okay.
I'm gonna have to wrap it up real quick. It's the last one.
Yeah. Thank you so much for the appreciation. Srila Prabhupada ki, Nitai Gaur Premanandi, Hari Hari Gaur.
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna,